Today we're looking at the latest NHL trade rumors involving the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Vancouver Canucks, as well as the Florida Panthers. Plus, there's a very interesting free agent goaltender on the market, getting the attention of a lot of NHL teams. We actually have several signings to look at, news from the NHL waiver wire, a change at the All-Star game, and Carey Price has finally met with the media. So we'll discuss what came from that as well, coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. First up, I want to discuss the Carey Price press conference that just took place here moments ago. I was watching the feed through Sportsnet. He answered several questions, made it clear that he has no desire to want to leave Montreal. He said his family is settled there. Obviously, he said he wouldn't have signed long-term with a no-move clause if he didn't intend on wanting to stick around. But clearly there are concerns over his knee, and it could be some time before we really know what's up exactly. He did reiterate his desire to want to play this year, but it is not really quite clear if that's a realistic expectation. He indicated that the next few weeks are going to be critical to determining that, and there is a possibility if he has any more setbacks, he may have to have another procedure and basically start his rehab all over again, at which point that would definitely shut him down for the year. But at this point, if the next few weeks go well and he doesn't have more setbacks, he certainly wants to get in there to play, if nothing else for his own, like he said, as part of his identity. Playing goal for the Habs is something he's done for over a decade. Certainly, for his own personal reasons, the love of the game, and obviously wanting to kind of prove that he can still play as well for his own sake. Heading to the offseason would be good for his own, physical and mental well-being. But certainly, nothing too earth-shattering from the press conference. But the big thing, though, I think it's fair to say, even though it wasn't exactly labeled this way, is you have to wonder about the long-term outlook and the possibility that Carey Price may have a lot of issues with this knee, and it could be an issue ongoing here. I mean, clearly, if he ends up with more setbacks and have to have another procedure, another surgery, that could certainly put him out for the whole year. You have to think there's bound to be some questions about, will he be able to come back and play? And if he does, will he be anywhere near the level he was before? I know one of the reporters even asked him if he was concerned about, being able to return to his previous level of play, and he said it's certainly something that he's thought about for sure. So obviously, when you're an injured athlete going through these types of things, I'm sure it's hard not to think about whether or not it's going to impact your performance, and certainly appears to be concerned, which is certainly understandable for sure. But certainly Carey Price, could he be back this year? It's possible, but these next few weeks will certainly be critical, and depending on how everything goes, I would think that this probably, if it doesn't go the greatest, certainly they're going to decrease the chances for sure that he ever leaves Montreal. Like I said, he does have a full control over that, so it's not like they can force him to be traded, but certainly something at this point he's expressed no desire, which he wouldn't do that in a press conference like this anyways. I would suspect if he ever did want to be moved or thought it was best for him to move on for whatever reason, I would think that'd be a private conversation that he wouldn't come out in a press conference and just admit like that. But either way, we'll see where this goes. But certainly nice to actually hear from the player himself and get his perspective on how things are going with his rehab and trying to make a return. Now, when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks and their vacant GM search, Elliotte Friedman's reporting that, of course, they have 3 internal candidates, including Solomon, who's the interim GM. They also have Mike Gillis in-house as well. And one of the external candidates that he feels has a real solid shot at becoming the full-time GM is Pat Verbeek, of course, who's a veteran of over 1,400 NHL games, has played a long time in the league, and he's been in an executive role in the front office jobs as an assistant GM as well for quite some time as well. Certainly worked a fair bit with Steve Yzerman in Detroit, and been around in a few different spots there. So Verbeek certainly is a guy that's very well experienced, been linked to some other jobs in the past, so wouldn't be shocking to see if he gets that job, but certainly not a clear-cut decision there yet. We should know probably something within the next week in which direction the Ducks are going, especially where they could have a very tough decisions to make around the deadline. Like, a lot of them on the Ducks, a lot of players were expected to be top trade bait guys, but of course we didn't expect the Ducks to be doing so well either. So they have to decide the direction of the team. A lot of pending UFAs there that it's hard to say what they're going to do. So they need to get a GM in place to help make those decisions. Now, on the NHL waiver wire, Aaron Dell was placed on waivers yesterday. He, in fact, cleared. No big surprise. The struggling goaltender who just got suspended for that dirty hit on Drake Batherson. Really no surprise there, so he can be assigned, of course, once the suspension is over, to the taxi squad or to the minors. Of course, the Sabres did get back Craig Anderson, and I believe Tokarski's on his way back as well if he's not already too. So certainly they can move Dell into one of those other roles. Heading to the Olympics, Team Canada head coach Claude Julien has apparently been injured due to kind of a freak accident fall on the ice when they were, I guess, on a team building event in Switzerland, and he apparently has a rib injury, and his doctor over there that he was seeing kind of recommended no travel for a couple of weeks, so he's going to unfortunately miss the Olympics. It will no longer be the head coach. Former Blackhawks head coach Jeremy Colleton, who was on the staff, is taking over head coaching duties heading into the games over in Beijing. Now, some updates on the All-Star game as well. Of course, we reported in recent days that Adam Fox and Nathan MacKinnon both suffered injuries here. We're going to be out and likely miss the All-Star game. That's now been confirmed. The replacements have been named as Preds captain Roman Josi will replace McKinnon, and Kuznetsov will replace Fox in the Metro Division, and Joe Pavelski is now the captain for the Central Division, which was previously McKinnon. And Jeff Merrick reported on the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada last night that obviously there are players that are not necessarily all-stars but being invited for particular events. Like, for example, Trevor Zegras is going to be going, and Zdeno Chara was invited for the hardest shot competition. Of course, he's won that event before, but he apparently has politely declined and will not be going, but he was invited. Obviously, he probably feels he can use the rest for the extra few days given where he's at in his career. Now, we also had a slew of signings out of the Vegas Golden Knights organization today, led by defenseman Braden McNabb, who's been there since their onset as a franchise, so they acquired him in the expansion draft from the Los Angeles Kings. McNabb signs a 3-year extension at $2.85 million. 31 years old. I know he was a guy that was kind of looked upon as maybe being a cost-cutting measure, considering that the Golden Knights are quite likely going to need to shed some salary, if not now, then in the offseason for sure. But clearly they have the Jack Eichel contract on LTIR. We don't know when Jack's going to be able to play, but if they have all their top guns healthy with other big contracts like Stone and Pacioretty, Pietrangelo, and etc., they need to move some money out, but right now there's no clear-cut answer when Eichel's going to play. So I think McNabb is less likely to be one of the players that they move, but certainly, really, that's good value though for him. It's a small raise, physical defenseman, playing on the left side, 31 years old. To me, they'd be wise to hang on to him. A good veteran guy there, a good leader as well. They also extended Michael Amadio, who they picked up on waivers earlier this year from the Maple Leafs. He gets a 2-year extension at $762,000 average annual value. He's been up 7 points in 25 games since arriving with the Golden Knights and has grabbed a regular spot there, so he's finally getting a more consistent shot to play. With the Leafs, he was in and out of the lineup. He was in the beginning, but then basically lost his spot. Wasn't in much, which is why he was put on waivers. Last year, he ended up in Ottawa. Didn't really fit all that great there either after spending a bunch of time with the Los Angeles Kings. And now he finally finds a home in Vegas where he seems to have settled in. Not putting up a ton of points, but a role player is what we expected for him anyways. And they also assigned goaltender Logan Thompson. Now, he's 24 years old, been a solid member here in the AHL in Henderson. He gets a 3-year contract extension with an average value of $766. So, considering he's got 2 years in the minors now, 2 to 3 years, and done really well, makes sense with their very, very tight cap situation like many teams, but Vegas is right up against it, largely due to the Eichel acquisition. Clearly, having a second goaltender, if he becomes that number 2 spot behind Leonard at that kind of money, would be very, very helpful. And of course, Leonard's money's not ridiculously high either, so they could have a pretty good goaltending tandem for just over $6 million, which is pretty good compared to what a lot of teams are spending. So that could become a very valuable contract to them if he continues to play and evolve his game to become a bigger part of the team here down the road. He's played a few games so far and looked decent, but like I said, the bulk of his time so far has been with AHL Henderson Silver Knights. Now, onto the trade rumor section of the video. Most of this comes from the 32 Thoughts segment last night on Hockey Night. Peter Mrazek was a big topic Jeff Merrick was talking about. The Maple Leafs apparently getting a lot of interest in the goaltender for potential trade ahead of the deadline. He says that the Leafs have had several teams inquire and let them know that if they're interested in trading the netminder, that they would be very interested in getting a deal done. Of course, they signed him to a 3-year deal at $3.8 million in the offseason. And at this point in time, he's certainly in a situation where he hasn't played a lot. Campbell's played the bulk of the games. Campbell's having a, Vezina conversation type of season. Certainly he's going to need a big extension for next year. But really, which makes sense right now, is Merrick's reporting that the Leafs they're not interested in doing any kind of goalie trades right now. They want to get Mrazek healthy, get him into more action, and ride things out this year with the two netminders. Certainly in the offseason, though, could be a very different story because they obviously they might not have been anticipating Campbell to do quite so well and might have been hoping to kind of run with more of a tandem for a few years, which is very important in today's NHL. But if Jack Campbell is going to be getting a significant raise and be, say, I'm not sure what he's going to get paid, let's say $6 million, well, you're not going to want to have another goalie at 3.8 with their cap situation and just can't afford that. So a Mrazek move in the offseason would become more likely. Right now, they're not forced to do that, so it doesn't make sense. And the Leafs are certainly linked to making some other, changes or upgrades ahead of the deadline, but the goaltending situation's not one of them. I know one of the players they mentioned as well to keep an eye on was Josh Manson, who's a defenseman in Anaheim who we've talked about a lot lately. Of course, like I mentioned before, Manson to me would be a terrific fit on the right side. He did go off against the Senators yesterday. Anaheim, Ottawa was the early game for Hockey Day in Canada, and he did get hurt, but we don't know the full extent of the injury. He didn't return to the game, so we're not quite clear on exactly what his status is, but there's plenty of time before the deadline. It didn't look like it would be anything too serious. But again, they reiterated that he is a player very much of interest to the Maple Leafs, and it makes a lot of sense that they likely will want to add a defenseman, possibly even a depth forward as well. But if they do make a trade on the blue line, Manson's contract's not crazy. He plays the right side. He can give you a little bit of offense, good puck mover, good physical guy as well. They could move out a defenseman, whether it be Justin Hall or Travis Dermott, if they need to make the money work, which would benefit Anaheim getting a decent younger defenseman. They probably prefer Dermott in that case in return. And then we'll see from there. It could be obviously other pieces involved. I don't think it'd be a one-for-one kind of deal, but still, watch the Ducks Manson to be a real target here for the Leafs getting closer to the deadline. Now, before we continue on, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Name a better duo than McDavid and Draisaitl this season. I've got one. Manscaped in grooming. That's right, our sponsors at Manscaped, the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have all the best tools to clean up your whole act when it comes to your hygiene for men. It's time to skate on the first line with the global leaders here in men's hygiene and join the movement at Manscaped, where you can get the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some fantastic new products just recently launched, including the brand new 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. This is a terrific product. Allows you to wash your hair in one fell swoop, leaves you smelling great. It has a refined cologne quality fragrance attached. Absolutely phenomenal. And of course, the other new product most recently launched is the premium body wash to kind of complete the set. But that's not all. Manscaped has new products coming out here yet again in January, so you want to stay tuned. The body wash gives you deep hydration, keeps you smelling great, and not only smelling great, but feeling moisturized as well. Join the movement at manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Another player the Leafs are linked to, but they're not the only ones here. Several teams are interested in an upcoming OHL free agent, and that's goalie Mac Guzda, who's playing for the Barrie Colts. He's a U.S.-born goalie. He's actually from Knoxville, Tennessee, and the Preds, which would be like his hometown team, are certainly one of the teams that are interested in signing the free agent goaltender. He just turned 21 years old. He started the season as a 20-year-old in the OHL. He's undrafted. Putting up so far a .931 save percentage and a .204 goals against average. Like I said, playing for Barrie, some real solid numbers. Previously, he played a few years for the Owen Sound OHL team. The numbers were decent, but not as good. Never got himself drafted, clearly. But he seems to have, he's not a small goalie. He's got good size, putting up some great numbers right now. And doesn't mean he's going to be a solid NHL goalie. Obviously a late bloomer, but you'd expect somebody at this age in juniors to certainly perform at a higher level, which we often see. Doesn't mean it's going to work out. You got to be careful with these, but certainly to get an entry-level deal, not much risk involved in that case. But other teams, including Pittsburgh, the Islanders, Rangers, and the Hurricanes, along with the Preds and the Leafs, are apparently involved, and there could be others too. Apparently, it seems like a guy's getting a ton of interest. Like really, like I said, when you get a good-sized young goalie like that, that's you're able to draft or sign without giving up assets, you want to take advantage of that. So we'll see where that goes, but obviously that's not going to be anything official until their season is officially done. Now, on to the other talks here. Let's look at the Florida Panthers. We know they've been at the heart of a lot of trade rumors. They're one of the NHL's top teams, along with teams like the Hurricanes, the Lightning, and really Florida and Carolina especially have been linked to a lot of different trade talk. Like they're clearly in it to win it this year. They believe they have the team that can make a run for it, which is great. At the same time, like I said, they're going to end up being linked to a lot of defensemen and forwards, making some last-minute changes here. And apparently, according to Jeff Merrick, he's saying Owen Tippett, who I've mentioned before as a potential player that would likely be involved, is indeed right at the forefront of all of their trade discussions. They've been linked to the Coyotes and the Chychrun trade talks when it comes to the defenseman there. That's one possibility. They've been linked to some other players as well, including some different forwards. I don't think Florida has really settled on exactly who they're gunning after right now, but they've had a variety of trade talks, and Tippett is the guy that they're offering as the main piece in any kind of return going the other way. So obviously Tippett, like I said, he's a guy who had a pretty solid junior career, is known as pretty much a shoot first mentality, pretty decent goal scorer in junior. Took his time kind of developing in the minors to finally get more of a full-time opportunity here with the Panthers in the last probably year to 2 years. And now he's at a point where, they're such a deep team that they could afford to move him if it means, getting another piece that they feel will really enhance their odds running forward towards the Stanley Cup. So look for Florida to be heavily involved in the trade deadline, and with Owen Tippett likely being the forefront of any package going out to accomplish that. Now, Elliot Friedman's reporting on Vancouver. He talked about the fact that there's been a ton of rumors around JT Miller, and we really don't know what's happening there, but he feels now that Jim Rutherford's got himself a GM and majority of his staff in place, that they're really getting down to business, and he feels that there's a lot of trade conversations going around many of the team's forwards. He mentioned he did not feel that guys like Horvat or Pettersson were involved in any kind of trade discussions, but many of the other players could be, including Connor Garland, of course, who's got a longer-term contract, not making a ton of money, not a really overly big guy, but he's plays really hard, really aggressive, really a pain to play against. Can give you some points, give you some goals as well. Had a solid run in Arizona before being included with the Oliver Ekman-Larsson going to Vancouver deal that we saw last offseason. He's been a decent fit there, but you have to wonder that, with Rutherford looking to kind of reshape the Canucks, like I said, and looking for some cap flexibility, one of their forwards with a longer-term contract is likely going to be moved, in my opinion. Whether it's not, I'm not really convinced it should be Miller, but I know he would get you a great return. Garland could be the guy. It could even be Brock Besser, as I mentioned a few days ago, given the fact he's owed a big qualifying offer of $7.5 million. There's going to be some change there. It's pretty much a given. It's just a matter of what happens. When it comes to Garland, though, Friedman's reporting teams like the Rangers, Bruins, Calgary, and Devils appear to be involved in the mix to potentially acquire him, or at least have had some form of conversations or preliminary talks with the Canucks around that player, to his belief there. So it's not just Miller that the conversations are around. It's a variety of players, including other forwards like Garland. So we'll see what Rutherford and Alvin decide to do in Vancouver now that they got their management team in place. But it does look like they're going to be reshaping the team in some capacity, trying to find some cap flexibility ahead of the deadline. So I would imagine that some of these players, though, will get a lot of interest, just a matter of where things go. But certainly lots of phone calls happening to Vancouver. A matter of time before we get a little bit more clarity on what's likely going to happen. And a lot of that could be determined by the team and players' play as we get closer to the deadline over the next several weeks. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.